And again, I found this absolutely fascinating. We were talking about this on the show yesterday, Philip. This was the first time Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have ever actually met. Which is extraordinary when you see, opposition leaders, senior figures, and left and right across the board in the UK will routinely meet, speak to each other, be at the same events. And America is so divided that the vice president and a former president and both future candidates, candidates for the presidency, have never actually met each other, spoken or shaken hands before.
Yeah, well, and she made that quite clear whenever the first thing she did on stage was walk up to him into his space, shake his hands.
That was a power move.
And it was, and introduce herself by name. And I thought, why do you have to say who you are? He knows perfectly well.
She was probably teaching him how to pronounce her name, because she's been vice president for 3.5 years and no one knows how to pronounce her name, which tells you quite a lot about how utterly unimportant she has been.
Well, I think that's the vice president post, though.
Who?
Yeah, how many vice presidents have we heard of beforehand actually
and the one we heard the least of was Dick Cheney, and Dick Cheney was running the White House at the time. Well, look, let's talk about who won, who lost. The trouble with any American TV analysis, any of those channels, is everyone is partisan. So as a general rule, they're completely partisan in favour of the Republicans, or Trump, completely partisan in favour of the Democrats. Anyone claiming to be neutral is always secretly a Democrat. That's how American broadcasting and newspapers work. I mean, that is the case. There were quite a lot of accusations that the two people who were asking the questions in the debate, the moderators yesterday, that they kept fact-checking Donald Trump. He does need a lot of fact-checking.
He does.
But they weren't doing it so much to Kamala Harris when she was saying things. But, I mean, a plague on all their houses?
Well, it was interesting. I didn't watch the whole thing. I must admit, I did not stay up to
2 a.m.
Yeah, to 2 a.m. and watch. But I have seen a lot of the highlights on the train on the way down this morning.
And the closing remarks are always very telling.
And it was interesting. The closing remarks, Donald Trump's closing remarks were brilliant. Clearly, that was the only bit that had been written for him. It had been rehearsed, and there was. But
they're not allowed an audio, are they? They still have to do it from memory.
Exactly. But he's a very good orator, and that's what comes across. But it was quite clear that Kamala Harris had decided what plan she was going to have, and her team had decided what plan they were going to have from the very outset, and it was to rile Trump and get him to run down lots of little rabbit holes.
And he
did. It worked brilliantly.
Now, you just know that his advisors would have been saying, please, you don't give in to that. So even when one of the questions did get to very tight points of time to speak, and he was asked, it was a question about immigration, but she had had a dig at him about how no one turns up to his. Well, no, people come to his rallies, but they leave out of boredom and and just exhaustion. They leave, and he was going, but no one comes to your rallies. You have to bust people in and pay them. So he used up some of his time answering that, as opposed to going with one of his key strengths, which is the immigration issue. Now, two big issues in American politics right now. Number one, by far and away, cost of living, inflation. By the way, their cost of living crisis, their inflation has been nothing compared to what we've seen here in the UK, because they haven't had the same pressure on energy, because they've had although ostensibly an absurd, crazy net zero policy, actually underneath it all, they've been fracking away, producing gas, producing oil, and their prices are nothing like where we've been. But the other big issue is immigration. Now, he made some comments about how we've got in Springfield, Ohio, talk about a claim that Haitian immigrants were eating people's pet dogs and cats. The moderator said, look, there's no substantiated evidence for this, but this is what local people had been claiming. Was that just a crazy thing, the sort of crazy thing that Donald Trump says, or was it actually, it could be actually quite clever, is that because that's such a good clip, and we'll be playing that clip very soon. So people talk about that, and so people are talking about the immigration issue. So is that good for him, fundamentally?
I think it's good and bad. And having seen some of the analysis, it seems to be a comment that JD Vance, his vice president candidate, had made beforehand. So that's where he got it from. And I suspect every news anchor across the United States has now been sent there to try and find someone who ate a dog or a cat and interview them on screen. But it's one of those ones where it will get the clip played time after time after time. It won't affect the support base that he's got there at the moment, but it will affect the floating voters, and that's what he's trying to get.
This is the key thing.
They will knock him down for this.
Most people are kind of decided, but by now you know who these people are, well, as much as we know who Kamala Harris is after almost 4 years in that role. I mean, his big attack was that she's a Marxist, she's a radical. You say you want to do these things, here's your plan. Well, that's great, but you've been in power for 3.5 years, you've not done any of it. That is a very fair criticism of Kamala Harris.
Yeah. It's a very fair criticism, and it's interesting. I think her tactics were twofold. One, to prove to the American public that she could debate, because Trump
it's a low bar, isn't it, to be president of the United States?
Exactly, but Trump had said that...
She can stand up and remember some words and know something.
But Trump had actually put an awful lot of effort into saying she couldn't, and she knocked him for 6.
He lowered expectations too much.
Exactly, and the second thing is, I think, if you look at the tactics, she's played to the women's vote. She got the debate on abortion, and then she got Taylor Swift just to endorse her immediately afterwards. That's playing to a lot of...
I want to ask you about that, because again, I think the abortion issue is a huge issue, and that's the sort of issue that I would make a single point issue for me, you know. But as he said, as Donald Trump said, he appointed judges to the Supreme Court who would hand this issue back to the states, and the states get to decide. I mean, it's up to the women in each of those states. Like, if every single woman voted on that issue, they could decide that tomorrow. So, but it was very interesting. Just moments after the debate ended, an hour-and-a-half debate, Taylor Swift endorsed Kamala Harris as a warrior, signing off her message as the Childless Cat Lady, of course, reference to something that Donald Trump's VP, JD Vance, had referred to, these childless cat ladies. How significant do you think that will be? Because the Democrats have always had a whole host of very, very famous celebrities who are much loved, who endorse them. Does it make any difference? Because Hillary Clinton had a load of those and it didn't work, but Taylor Swift is uniquely powerful with young women who often don't vote. Yeah,
and I think that's the target audience. And was this pre-prepared? Of course it was pre-prepared. For it to come out so quickly with the clear statements and everything else, that had been carefully crafted. And does it help? Well, the American political debate is so shallow that endorsement by the right celebrity at the right time, if you've got the rest of the argument going as well. Hillary Clinton didn't, but if you've got the rest of the argument going as well, can make a difference, because you're talking of a few percentage points.
I mean, other than abortion, I literally have no idea what Kamala Harris's positions actually are on anything. I mean, they released a policy document very recently, but I mean, 2 days before the debate. Look, let's move on. I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. If you want to get in touch about the debate, if you've seen enough of it to make a judgment. But most Americans won't see. They'll just see the clips as well, won't they? Love to hear your thoughts. What celebrity could endorse a candidate that would bring your vote? I find this utterly bizarre that anyone would vote on that basis. I'm not sure people who vote a certain way because Taylor Swift or any other celeb has said something should vote. I'm just thinking, you're too stupid. I like Taylor Swift, but she ain't going to tell me what my politics are. Yeah,
but we get Idris Elba in this country coming in and talking about knife policy. So the same thing is creeping into our politics here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind if that gets more of the news. But again, there shouldn't be more news about it because it happens to be, Idris Elba doing it. But celebrities doing something practical to help kids from backgrounds that they've come from, I'm all in favour of, Look, let's also talk about what has been happening back home. Big events yesterday. We talked about it incessantly on the show. Winter fuel payments vote in the Commons. 52 Labour MPs abstained. Only one, John Trickett, voted against the government, voted with the Tories. That might have been a pretty difficult thing for him to do. We're told it's the biggest rebellion that Keir Starmer's had so far. And you think he's only been in office for a bit, but there was a vote over Gaza that he's had in terms of his rebellions, but of course on child benefit cap as well. But the key thing about these 52 abstained is many of those would have been given permission. They're on an official trip. They were already going to be away, or they're ill, or major family event. But many of those did, well, at least a dozen didn't have permission. But also there's lots in the middle who were basically saying, look, I want to abstain, but I don't want to make life difficult for the government. Could I have a free pass to just, I've just got an event, I can't be here. You know how these things are done. How damaging is this for Keir Starmer?
I think from a longer-term perspective, and because it's so early on in his premiership, it's actually really quite damaging. Because what he's done is he has stuck by a policy that was clearly very unpopular. I don't think they'd thought through the implications of the policy before they brought it out.
They've been preparing for 4 years.
Exactly, and when you look at the maths that are coming out, they're not countering it. If everyone signed up for the additional allowances that would put you in the bracket to get a winter fuel allowance, that would cost the government more than they're going to get back in the winter fuel allowance. And to turn around and keep saying, and your 1.2 billion is going to affect
1.4. I have different figures. They don't know.
They don't know. Or a 22 billion black hole. That 22 billion black hole is part of a 1,200 billion economy that we've got, which is
also they knew about in advance and they didn't mention it before.
So,
I mean, I have to say, the question today we're asking, is this what you expected from a Labour government. You know, tell us why it was, tell it why it wasn't. I mean, genuinely, I will keep saying, I thought they'd be bad. I just think an awful lot of the people involved, particularly Keir Starmer, are not perfectly clever people, got lots of credentials, but actually they're people who think that if you just say something, then something happens, as opposed to actually having to do it. I just don't think that Keir Starmer has the temperament or the ability to be a good leader. Not saying the alternatives were any better, but I expected them to do badly. I did not expect them to be this bad. What about the 1,700 free prisoners? The scenes we saw yesterday are outside prisons. Now, I imagine you get these scenes quite often when people are freed from prison. Their loved ones, their family members, their friends come to meet them. But yesterday, seeing people, I mean, a lot of the wives and girlfriends putting on their best tracksuits, which was very nice of them. You know, just make an effort for your fella when he comes out. But people, you know, spraying, I'm going to guess not champagne, something a bit cheaper and stickier, you know, spraying that all over. Young lads coming out. We had someone being greeted by someone, as Mike mentioned, with a Lamborghini. Bit questionable that. I wonder what he does for a living. I'm going to go out on a limb. Drugs, sir? Drugs involved at all? But we had people coming out saying, yeah, I'm going to be a lifelong Labour supporter now. People who'd be, you know, a man freed early after assaulting his girlfriend in the street, his ex-girlfriend, obviously, in the street, you know, in broad daylight on camera. You know, people coming out for convictions like that. People who've been lifelong criminals, who've been in and out, you know, 50 convictions, been in and out of jail, coming out and saying, yeah, I've got nowhere to live, I'll probably be back there within the month. I mean, it was a joke, but it wasn't a very funny joke.
The bigger issue here is we've taken a number of people without properly risk assessing them from an environment where the risk is controlled by the prison service to putting that risk on the probation service, i.e. the local community.
And the public,
and it's the public that are potentially going to pay the price for this. And this is 1,700. There's another 2,000 due for release at some stage in the future. And the probation service is broken. And unless they had fixed that... It was beforehand. Yes. Unless the government had invested in to do something to fix that and give it additional capacity in somewhere or other before they're released, they're just moving the risk around. And this is going to cause even bigger problems. Absolutely.
And it's just absurd. Again, people point out that these people are going to be released after 50% of their sentence anyway. That's what the Tory policy was. I mean, 40%, what difference does it make? Well, I mean, I think it makes difference to those who are the victims of their crimes over the next few weeks or months. But again, both policies are insane and completely morally wrong, and they are a lie. But when a judge sentences someone to 3 months, 2 years, whatever it is, 10 years, that's what they should serve. And anything lower than that is lying to the general public and deceiving the victims. And it's got to stop. And if you want to put my taxes up to pay for more prisons, to do that and put them behind bars for the length of time you're actually planning to put them behind bars for, that's fine. I will pay those extra taxes. That is well worth the money for the lower crime rate.